Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 9:06. And if we could have a pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is a meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Monday, January 25th, 2019. And moving ahead, we've got the minutes from February 2nd, the regular meeting. And I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes of the one at the top is February 2nd. The February 2nd.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They all?
Yeah, fix that. I was in the wrong. We should all correspond to what's up top.
They're not all January 16th. And as written, and can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion or corrections? All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then I will make a motion to approve the minutes of February 6th. Correct that. As written, can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then I will make a motion to approve the minutes of February 11th.
Second.
And can I get a second on that?
Sue seconded.
Sue did, there we go. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I will make a motion to approve the minutes of February 13th. As written, can I get a second?
Second.
There we go. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. No correspondence, all right. And first Selectmen's report, a couple of things. Attended a meeting last Tuesday with Kristen Brown, and she represents DEEP in terms of the transfer station and moving forward with the bag system. And we agreed that we'd get started in March, give us a chance to finish up the budget process, and then get rolling on that. So next week or so, we're going to be getting together and working out a program for that. Thursday, went up to CCM, and we had a meeting with Ryan, and I hesitate on the last name, DeJois, who is the chief of staff with the governor. And he was there basically to give us some sort of a sense of where the governor was going with his administration. Talked about a lot of things. I'll just touch on a few of them. He's very interested in a world-class transportation system, and I think if you listen to the news, you can sense that. He's down in Waterbury today looking at the Mixmaster. There's going to be more support for tourism, and that's something that's been lacking for quite a long time now. There's been discussion. Senator Looney brought forth a few things. One of those was a mill statewide tax on property on behalf of the state, 1 mill charge, and also removing the car tax and transferring that to the state. That's not actively supported by the governor at this point, according to his chief of staff. The regionalization of schools, which is a issue that a lot of people have a problem with, and consolidation if it's less than 2,000 students. There's no support for the regionalization, There is low support for the consolidation. If there's less than 2,000 students, that could impact us. Regionalization of superintendents, there's likewise some support on the governor's part. And one of the things that's interesting and would certainly impact us, they're talking about regionalization of assessors and regionalization of tax collection. So that's kind of a, gee, where'd that come from? But that's kind of what we got out of that meeting. And one of the things I do see with this governor is he's trying to reach out. He's trying to communicate and find out where people stand. But I'm also a little mistrustful. He swore up and down that there'd be no tolls on cars, and all of a sudden it's on the table. And so I've got mixed feelings there. That said, Tony, you came here with a thought that you might be able to give us a report or a discussion on marijuana, which is pending and seemingly is going to pass, the way I'm hearing everything.
Yeah, I wanted to begin a conversation with you guys. I'm not as sure that it's going to pass, but it certainly does seem to be moving in that direction, and it has the support of the governor, that being the legalization of marijuana for recreational use. And there's a lot of data out there on both sides of the question. That statistics can pretty much tell you whatever you want it to tell you, depending on how you read it. So I'm not really here to talk about statistics, although I can share those with you if you would like. What I'd like to do is start a conversation about what do we do in a community like ours? What happens to a community like East Haddam if, in fact, marijuana is legalized for recreational use? Because what comes with that is retail shops, edibles on shelves, at least one of the 2 or 3 bills that are being considered in Hartford at this point includes homegrown marijuana, which means individuals can have up to, I think, 6 plants grown in their backyard. So for me, that changes the culture of this community. If those things begin to happen, and they can with legalization, it changes the culture of this community. For us as adults, for our children, for our grandchildren. So I wanted to ask you, I guess 2 things. One is, what kind of authority does a community like ours have to create its own ordinances around those types of things coming into the community? And do you think it's important for us to begin that conversation so that we can be proactive and prepare for that eventuality if in fact it comes down the pike? So it's really trying to open a dialogue, because I think we're looking at a real shift in our culture if this happens.
Sue, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I would imagine, we can do any ordinances we want, right, in town, so.
Can we?
I think we
can we?
No, I don't know. Can we do ordinances related to this? If it's a
I really don't know. It depends on how the legislation is written.
Yeah, until it's on the books, we just don't know
Okay, well,
what we're
then
dealing
You
with.
have to go to your town authority.
we wouldn't know until,
So is it something that is important to begin to talk about, you think?
well, until you have the state, it sounds like until we have the state decision, we can't do anything about it. I don't know.
I-
You'd probably better to answer that.
I spent some time in Alaska last summer, and in Anchorage, or Alaska, passed legislation probably, 10 years ago that legalized it up there. Every corner in town had a group of people, usually homeless, God knows what they do in the winter, kind of sitting around, begging, looking for whatever. Many of them with a cardboard sign they'd hold up like this, showing a weed.
So,
Obviously, weed available. Talking to people about the impact on them of legalization on that community. Crime was way up, all sorts of problems all over town. I think we need to do what we can to address it. We have to stay within the law.
the question is, though, right, so can we do anything ahead of time, not knowing
It's,
what the law is gonna turn, and what type of local ordinances we could put in place?
Yeah.
That's the question.
And,
I'm
until
asking.
we see the legislation and how it's written and talk to the lawyers, I don't think there's an awful lot we can do right now immediately.
I think we can begin to have community conversations. I think we
Conversations,
we can
yes.
open this up so that, because, you know, when people hear the arguments, whether it be from the prevention community, which I represent, or normal, which is the marijuana industry, they hear about individual numbers, they hear about incarceration, we argue about whether or not there's increased access for kids. So people get confused. What people don't talk about is what it means to have a retail shop open up next to Nathan Hale Pharmacy, or what it means to walk into Gristmill and see gummy bears and marijuana-infused drinks on the shelves next to the regular candy. People don't understand, I think, that that's what's going to happen. That it's going to be very real. I don't think people understand that legalizing marijuana means the employment force is going to change. Because are we going to hire somebody to run machinery at Shagbark who's smoking dope on his way into work in the
Well, I
morning?
think that's something that each employer is gonna have to handle themselves.
As a community, we need to begin to, I think, make sure that folks understand what the impact it will have. You know, I talk to parents every day whose children are very young, and they say, well, I don't have to worry about this right now because my kids are 5. And that's true. They don't have to worry about their kids using. But they do have to worry about their kids living and growing up in a community where it is very prevalent.
But isn't this up to Youth and Family Services? Like, isn't this something that you should be maybe writing information about, publishing it in the Haddam News,
And we do.
doing
It
forums? Okay.
absolutely is, and we do.
But as a town, we can't, it sounds like we can't act on anything until we actually have the legislation from the state so that we know what we are and aren't, correct? I mean,
Well, that's true, but I think,
but we're doing, what she's already doing forums.
I think a more public forum, because right now it's just the Youth and Family Services primarily and some school groups, I think, talking about this, but I don't think everyone understands all the ramifications that are coming
Well-
out. And that's worth, I think, having a conversation about.
Well, liquor is legal, but towns can be dry.
Right.
Again, that depends on the legislation,
Like,
how it's
yeah,
written.
it's
How it's written. But you know,
I
Tony,
think having the weight of town government behind this issue, I think could be very helpful at this point.
you were presenting for quite a while
I'm sorry.
drug-related forums over at the high school. I attended a great many of them and learned a lot. And I think that sort of thing, bringing people in for a candid discussion. And if that's something you could drive again, I think I'd be very receptive to it.
Well, I think we should, because it will have an impact on the town, I think that the Selectmen's office should co-sponsor, if nothing else.
I absolutely.
I agree, I would appreciate that.
You're gonna be talking to Rich Roberts tomorrow
Yeah.
on some other issues. That would be a great time to bring it up to him.
Yeah.
Discuss this with him, see what our options are, see what we can do, what we can't do. Because I'm assuming it might be like the adult-oriented, ordinance that we have.
Mhm.
You know, it might flow along those lines possibly, but you could talk to him tomorrow and just get a heads up.
Yeah, that came to
First
mind.
line heads up.
You know, I was on planning and zoning when we passed that ordinance, and I remember that process.
Is that the alcohol?
No, this
For
is
adult entertainment.
stores we don't have.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
But is that all regulated by whatever passes or not?
You know, until we see what's going on and how the state does it, if they do it, we're certainly surrounded right now by states that have permitted it.
But having statistics published about where it's allowed to be sold and those types of things is helpful to start
People think,
people thinking, right, about what we really want for the town, so when it does come down the board, then
yeah, it's really about that. That's the conversation we need to have here.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so we will initiate that, we'll start pulling that together at our end and bring it to you to co-sponsor with us.
do you
Unless,
have better attendance at your forums when you have meetings. I just find that the town doesn't have great attendance at any community forums we pull together. I mean, not saying that we won't co-sponsor, but I'm just wondering what your
No,
attendance is like.
it's true, it's very difficult to get folks to come out, people are busy, it's a tough topic, people are uncomfortable having the conversation often.
And again,
Right.
having them videotaped and available on YouTube
On
and
YouTube,
stuff like that is
that'd be
a,
helpful. But I think if we frame it around, this is our community, and this is the community we want to raise our kids in, and we frame it around the impact that it has, as opposed to just do or do not, I think that might pique the interest of the community. I hope.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey,
Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
thank you, Tony, and for all you do. I'm looking. Next, moving forward, new business, renewal of the grant for application for Middlesex Hospital. And I don't see that letter.
it's in there.
It's under your
Whereabouts is that? Probably here somewhere, but I don't see it.
It's in there, right after the minutes.
Gotta get stuck on the minutes.
What letter you looking for?
Middlesex.
Oh,
I gave him mine.
Yeah, I just don't see it there. In any case, there it is, with the cutbacks, cost savings made by Middlesex Hospital over the past year. We're able to end the fiscal year with a favorable profit margin. It was above what was expected in light of this because of the continued uncertainty regarding the state's budget impact to local towns. The executive team will not increase the per capita charge for the next contract term, July 1st, 2019 through July 30th, 2020. It means the rate of $1 per capita will hold for an additional year, will not be increased to $2 until the next contract term, which begins July 1st, 2020. Please find the amendment to the agreement for your review and signature. Once again, please sign and return. And that's on the back side of it is the third amendment at $1 per. I'm just a little curious because our count has gone down to 9,000 and I believe 31 or 32. It doesn't indicate what it's based upon. We were at 9126, I believe, before. In any case, I'm going to make a motion that Emma J. Lyman, First Selectman, is hereby authorized to sign a one-year renewal of the grant application with Middlesex Hospital for paramedic service with a term from July 1st, 2019 to July 30th, 2020. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
okay.
Aye. There we go, it's over there. Now I found it. It's in the far pile. Oh, dear. And then we have a board commission change. And I'm going to make a motion to appoint Allison Kajap.
Carpe,
How's it?
carpe.
Carpe, okay, I got that wrong. As a member of the East Haddam School Capital Improvement Building Committee. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Okay. And we have a message or a note from Bob Kasner. At the next Board of Selectmen meeting, would you request the board to appoint to the EDC Jim Fenema from alternate to regular member, appoint Mike Robideau to an alternate position with the EDC. And we have an application from Mike attached. And Mr. Fenema is being moved up to fill Susan Smith's position. And I'm going to make a motion to change the status of James Fenema to an alternate member of the regular member, from an alternate member of the regular, to filling a vacant position with a term of expiration June 30th, 2021 in the Economic Development Commission. Can I get a second? Ooh. And a discussion? All in favor? I'll make a motion to appoint Michael Ribito as an alternate member of the Economic Development Commission for a vacant 5-year term to expire June 30th, 2020. Can I get a second on that?
Second, sorry.
Any discussion?
Yeah, what is his background?
Yeah, I know, it's a letter a lot about,
That
really
he's
clear
well
what.
organized and detail oriented, yada, 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 but I have no idea what his background
he-
is.
yeah,
I'm on that few minutes for the EDC, and I know he's, I think he's president of the Business Association. I don't know what his professional background is, but he's president, he's on the Business Association.
I'd like to see a resume before we vote.
We don't require them.
Don't require resumes?
You know, you've
And Sue
appointed
Smith
other
recommended
people and
him.
you haven't had one. So-
Well, usually it says what they've done. This doesn't really say that.
he
Yeah,
talks a lot about his
variety of
skills,
skills.
right, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I would imagine they did the.
Resume available upon request. And you do seem to be requesting that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's table that and we'll deal with it. The tabling, you're right?
We're gonna postpone.
Postpone.
Postpone it.
I mean, I probably will have no objection, but I mean, he should have just included that if that's.
Okay. That said. We have no tax refunds. We'll move on to the Selectmen's discussion. Anything else that you'd like to comment on? Sue? Okay. And the public? Do we have any public comment?
Having heard the discussion about the marijuana legalization, Mr. Smith is right, the ability of the town to vote dry is built into the liquor statutes, liquor control statutes. So the point I would make is, if, as you say, and I tend to agree with you, this looks likely to pass, our next line of defense is locally. And it might, whoever the proper channel is for the town government to communicate with Mr. Needleman and Ms. Haynes to get that option into the legislation. And if we want to use it, we've got it. But, you know, the forums may not get through may not convey that to them, and that's really, to say that's, at least we'll have that line of defense.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Okay, anyone else? Jay?
I was also piggyback on Tony's thoughts about getting ahead of this issue, and especially if you are meeting with a lawyer. I think as the largest employer in town, or that in town employees, we should be ahead of our policies on what happens with legal marijuana. We already have policies regarding smoking and drinking, which are abused and ignored constantly. But this one adds another layer of impairment that we cannot test for or possibly get a handle on ahead of time with our employees and our volunteers, for that matter, who may be using this type of stuff and then responding to emergency calls. We already have issues with that, and something we should address with our lawyer ahead of time. Secondly, one of my other favorite subjects, when I've spoken to you in the past year regarding the changes in the fire department, paid staff and the volunteers and the policies that are being presented, the budget process, I've been trying to stay on topic in those hearings. something happened recently, a couple things that I got wind of. I don't know if any of you attended the annual awards ceremony for the volunteer fire department this year. But in that ceremony, the volunteer fire chief chose that time to stand up and cheer for getting rid of Wick Halon, Jay Moreau, Ryan Scholes, Jason Armstrong. Now that we got those guys out of our way, our agenda can move forward. Rousing cheers from his audience of volunteer firemen. So for the last year, I've been speaking about a hostile work environment, other types of work environments. It's all happened. They're too foolish not to stop talking about it. They do, in front of people, and I get the word back.
Were those all, Joe, excuse me, Joe, were those, Jay, were all those people permanent employees or part-time?
Full-time and 3 part-time.
Okay.
But as Ryan and I, at the point were, doing scheduling and budgeting and every other thing. And apparently we were in the way. So besides the personal conflict, professionally, we were in the way of their agenda, which is obviously coming forward before us in budget season. So their end goal is to get all their types of volunteer guys in these positions, get more money, staff more time. And in the meantime, we push career firefighters out of service for the town. We're working here day in and day out, and had been for years. In Ryan's case, 13 years working for this town. Pushed out of the way for their agenda. So I thought you should be aware of that. Those types of comments still end up in my lap. And I don't think it's coincidental the way we were treated over the last year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Were you there, Emmett?
No,
Were you able to attend?
no, I did not attend.
Did we get invited?
Historically?
Historically, yes, I've attended in the past. This year I was not able.
I know I was invited last year, but I don't, and
I went last year.
Okay.
So no invitation.
no invitations this year. I didn't get an invite.
Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback some of the comments on marijuana. I guess I would say it might be advantageous to try to talk with towns in Massachusetts and see what they've experienced. And that may help get a handle on what some of the issues are. I don't know if there are similar towns to East Haddam size that you have contacts with, or you might be able to discuss, or Rhode Island, or some of the neighboring states, similar towns with similar issues. You might gain some insight as to what's going on there. So just a thought of how to get ahead of it a little bit and maybe be prepared for what what might come down the pike.
Oh, that was where I was trying to comment on Anchorage, because I lived with it for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
And had a chance to really see what the impact has been up there, and it's not good. But in any case, that's certainly something we need to be doing. But let's see where the legislature goes first. We can still be hopeful that it won't happen,
But we should be prepared before.
but we need to be ready on the assumption that it will. You're
I
right.
mean, we have a beach house in Massachusetts, which is right over the line from New Hampshire. Same size as our town, around 9,000. It gets busier in the summer, obviously. But they're putting in a store in our town. I had no idea, right? Because I'm not there during the winter. So it got approved somehow. But,
Probably if the legislation says they have to approve it, or.
right, so that's what the scary part is, like, how do we
The truth-
address it?
The truth is, to some extent, we're dealing with it already. There's more problems than you can imagine. Our police and our ambulances are carrying Narcan nonstop and using it on a regular basis already. We've got problems even without that. Okay. Moving forward, general budget review workshop. And I just realized I walked away without my tax manual, so I'm gonna go get that while Cindy sets up here.
Oh, yes.
How I spent my weekend.
Has the RFQ gone out for the downtown?
No, I don't think so, right?
Linda? Did the RFQ go on? Or
It's not set to be released until March first.
Okay, that's what I thought,
Committee
but
is
I,
meeting on Wednesday night to review the final version.
So they hope it'll go out.
So I have it set to March first, but if there's any little tweaks, it might push to the following week, but it's this close,
Yeah,
to be going out.
okay.
Here, just came back from the attorney with some minor adjustments that I have to try to put in sometime today so I can get it to the committee. So that when they meet, because they wanted the final view before it goes out.
One for Ron as well.
What's that one?
That's all I'm looking
For who?
for. Ron.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Linda,
you.
is there a federal grant for the grant?
I mean, there was before, but
For the state?
we didn't get that.
Then I agree that it might be another.
We didn't qualify for what.
Is there not a plug over there?
So,
That one doesn't work.
Right, okay.
Could be two there.
Yeah, it's just, it makes it so I can't,
Oh, you, yeah.
it's fine.
does Sue have one there?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
She doesn't need the plug, she needs to move that
It
plug.
just kills space. It's all right. I'll survive.
What do you need?
Nothing.
This is a whole new jet
This one doesn't
section
work?
too.
No, it's never worked.
It does, that's just somebody in the building.
I think that's low on the punch list. It's probably just not plugged in down here.
It probably just needs to be plugged into the,
I know.
well, thanks for waiting till take a break.
I didn't know if he was coming now or at 11.
You all have new sections, and then I have a bunch of handouts. Which we can go through as we work our way through.
This is a complete new,
Yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't have all your notes. It doesn't like that.
so how many trees have we killed so far?
Not enough.
So much for a paperless society, huh?
Things that have changed, I've highlighted for you in purple and blue or a different color.
So where are we today?
Start right at section 1 and walk through. Might be the best bet, and then there'll be handouts as we go.
See where we wind up.
Just let me know when you're ready to go.
Okay. Rob,
One
ready?
second, one second. Hold your horses.
So, can we start with a fundamental question, if you don't mind me asking? Where do you guys want to be with the budget?
What was that?
Where do you want to be with the budget?
You want us to be realistic, or?
Yeah, realistically, where do you want to be? Budget.
Is he ideally or realistic?
That's what I just asked. Yeah.
Did I what?
I was on the front. See the sheet here? That's the
it
Bible.
up,
It's on.
Can we throw it out or no? You want us to throw out?
You can, or some people keep, I always
keep it
scan
so I
mine.
can go back and look at it.
It was just getting to be easier to have it updated. I had so many notes, but I scan mine and keep them.
I'm just curious where everyone thinks, before we start like going line by line and looking at it, right? Because at this point,
I
right?
mean, we should have a goal.
Uh-huh. Barb.
Well, if you turn to the last page in this section, you'll see where the mill rate stands right now. Perhaps that will give you a clue as to what your work is. So page 12. At the bottom, right.
5.42 mils.
What? No, 4.36.
Where are you?
You're on your wrong section, Emmett.
You got a new section
You're on
over there.
you're not on the new section.
There you go.
I'm on the old.
And I tried to date all the pages today, so you could tell the versions.
I use a clip and just clip for the old section. So 4.36 change, 3402. What does that bring us?
4.36.
That would be a tax increase of 15.6%. Where do you stand?
Thump.
Hey, it was 5 before.
Okay, so what if we said it was 2, right? So 2%. We'd have to,
Look at your mill rate sheet.
that would be 30.25 or something.
If you were looking at 2%, you'd hover around $550,000 increase, and right now you have an increase in front of you
800. No?
No.
No, sorry.
of a budget increase of 4.8 million. So you would have to find 4.3 million.
$4.3 million of cuts right now if we wanted a 2% mill rate increase, which is around $100 a household.
But there's other things to look at here. This assumes we put a full 25% match to FEMA in cash, and we know we're not going to do that. And at this point, there's no way I can forecast what our in-kind will be with FEMA.
Okay, so
versus-
the 4.8, how much of that is a FEMA?
Hang on a second, I'll tell you. The FEMA expenditures are 3.7 million, and we were estimating a reimbursement of 229,16714.
2.9?
Yep,
Oh, 2.9?
yeah.
Oh, I thought you said 229.
Well, that's what I was trying to, at first thought, that's what I thought, but that would not
Okay,
work
so-
out to be 75%, so.
So.
Is that in that page 6 or?
It is in section 6, you'll see the pieces, but, so this then bases the budget on a match of cash of 800,000, and I think the likelihood of that will be maybe half, 60%. But on a case-by-case basis by the projects, our force, labor, equipment, administrative costs, if I couldn't even begin to forecast what those are gonna be. We're gonna have to take it job by job, whether our guys are doing it, whether a contractor is doing it.
Is that something Ms. Lunt should be helping us determine?
She's been submitting so far for claims, and we received an email this morning on the first pass, but we would have to cost out every piece of equipment, there'd be a lot of assumptions.
Well, I think there's gonna be assumptions in this.
But you do understand what they're talking about doing, right? Is pulling it
Yeah.
out of the budget.
Yeah.
So I go back and forth on this, right? I don't wanna overtax,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I wanna be realistic, right? And
Right.
understand that, right? We don't wanna go back for taxes or take it out of general reserves,
Right.
general fund balance,
So
whatever.
the question is, we'll have to assume we'll get the 2.9. Then the balance of the 800,000, do we guess that maybe, like you said, 50% would be matched or whatever they call it? Or-
It would be seriously a guess. That's why I had
Well-
suggested if you pull it out, then each project is done on a case-by-case basis, and we could evaluate what
You
our
pull the
match
whole
would be.
thing out?
Yeah, and the likelihood of it being done in a year, I think, is pretty slim. Some people think we could, but that's a lot of work in 1 year. It's just.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's certain things that are gonna be part of the sequence. So Neptune Avenue is probably gonna be totally contracted out, so there wouldn't be a match, or there would be a match. That's what I'm trying to see.
And this is where it gets tricky, because on some items, if it's remediation, they're gonna give us 100%.
Right.
So we don't even know until FEMA approves each of these projects, what our reimbursement is and what they'll honor and what they won't.
But we do know for sure they're gonna give us 2.9 million.
That's just 75%. That's just
Right,
taking a
but we
stab.
know for sure, that's what I'm saying.
No, we don't, because they have to approve each project. So I'm just doing a straight line, 75%. I have no way,
If they're gonna approve a project or not approve a project.
right, or
Or
just,
even if the projects will come in at the cost that
Right.
we've
They
outlined.
might be 100%.
Or, I mean, the project, they could say, no, this doesn't
Right.
deserve a FEMA
Right.
thing, but, you know.
and I thoroughly understand Sue's position on fund balance, and I appreciate that, because if you do an appropriation, you go into fund balance. But I also hate to tax people 800,000, that's
Right.
not gonna come to fruition as well. It's a tricky one. I have to say, the email we received this morning and what Beth had put together for first pass to FEMA, number one, they commended how thorough she was. And number two, our representative was able to make some adjustments to get us greater reimbursement, which was, you don't usually see that. So, it's a tough guess. She was asked to put it into the budget and get it all out there, but I guess it's, how do we handle it?
What's our fund balance now? What's the percent?
16.8, I believe.
Percent?
Our fund balance grew by 504,000 last year,
Because of,
largely due to taxes. Denise collected some really outstanding balances, and we underspent.
I was gonna say, how much did we underspend by?
We were about 250 and 250. It gave us a 500. Half was revenue, and half was revenue over budget, and half was expenses under budget. In simple terms, revenues came in at 101% and expenses came in at 99.
Okay.
So it's a tough one.
That 16% without, or 17% without me doing the math would give it is, what's the actual value or,
What's our fund balance?
yeah.
In a second, and I'll tell you. Unassigned balance is 4.9 million. Fund balance as a whole is 5.1.
So our low point, our policy for the low of fund balance is what number?
Board of Finance policy is between 8 and 13%.
And where were we last year? At the end of the budget, was it? Were we at 12 or 11 or something?
June 30, we were at 16, and the number is 16.2. At June 30, 18, we were at 16.2.
Yeah, I know, but when we were doing the budget, I think we came in.
We were much more conservative in those figures, thinking we'd be about 13, 14.
So if your concern is that we don't wanna tax them, we've already taxed them for the fund balance. Would it make sense, because of these unusual circumstances, just to rely on that? And that would bring it back down into the 13% probably.
And the one thing about grants is they have to go through the Board of Finance and then the town meeting. And this board calls the town meeting. So each piece has to be accepted by the town. So we would know it based, say, here's Neptune, just an example, it's 500,000. State says, or FEMA is gonna give you 425, 75,000, we could do an in-kind of 50, and it's an appropriation of 25. So we would know that based on each project, we'd have a
Right.
better idea of what we would have done in equipment and labor and overhead, and we'd also know what the FEMA had approved for it. So that makes it a little easier on a case-by-case basis, instead of a big broad stroke of almost $4 million.
Well, I agree with that. Case by case basis, that's what I'm just saying, do we throw a dart at the wall or just figure it out as it, pay it off from that fund balance as becomes, or do we fund it partially and, those are the questions, I guess. What do you think, Sue?
So what's the number when we pull it out?
You come down 800,
So now we're at 4.1 million, or 4 million.
you come down 800,000 in round numbers.
We still have to find
A lot.
3.5 million.
So, given that, I have more information from the state and stuff. Would it be helpful just to walk through some of that?
Sure.
And you haven't done other budgetary funds as well, so we can look at the reserves.
Yeah.
Just in this summary, and I know Brian Reese will be here later, one change on the bottom of page 4, section 1, in purple, teacher's retirement system. Governor Lamont is proposing that we contribute $61,982 to the TRB. That number more than doubles next year. And for anybody who saw, the initial release from the state had typos in it, and they had that number at 10,000. OPM was frantically calling towns on Thursday to tell them it was wrong and a new amount would be issued.
Wait, say that again?
So Governor Lamont is proposing we start to contribute to the teachers' retirement fund.
Which we talked about for a couple years now, right?
Right, when it first came out under the former governor, he was more like $1 million. This is 60,000. But I just wanted to caution you, the first release said 10,000, it wasn't 10,000. OPM had typos.
Okay.
So there,
So it's really 62,000, what you're
Right.
saying?
Roughly.
So it's a $50,000 typo.
yeah. So when they did that across the state, it was significant.
Yeah.
And keep in mind.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So that's an additional item here for you. And another additional item in revenue and expense is I put in the Rathbun Library transfer to capital. I recognize the one-time revenue and the transfer to capital for it. Remember that additional funding from the trust?
Oh, right.
So it washes itself out, but you'll see that in there as well. So did you want to start with other budgetary funds or start in on section 2?
I'll save section 2 till last.
All right, so go to tab,
At least that's my opinion.
tab 6, other budgetary funds. This is what Sue had been asking for. This is the different fund balances. The only one that's not completely filled out is the last column in yellow, capital projects funds. That's the general fund transfer, and I haven't forecasted what we'll expend this year, and I have no idea what you're gonna transfer in this year as well. We'll complete that later. But on tap to use of reserves is you have, they're noted by letters. It breaks down the high school roof, the request to use Lakes reserves, and it shows other transfers in, which is 20,000 that the ambulance gave us, and 21,725 that Board of Ed had left last year to go into their reserves. So it shows you the projected June 30, 2020 ending balance.
Based on the adding in,
So if you go down to the last few lines, proposed budget
okay.
transfers ends. So you can see that it proposes 105,910 into fire, 30 into reval, and I have detail sheets we can walk through following this. 25 to ambulance, 489,410 into capital project savings, and 100 into education. So this represents an increase to 3 of the reserves, and I can walk you through each one in the pages to follow if you want.
yeah, let's do that.
So on page 2, this is fire reserves. It shows estimated cost for 4 different apparatus and when they would be expended. And then it just walks through the June 30 ending balance and then use of fund balance, this year's deposit, and then a projection of contributions in order to accomplish all those fire apparatus. And it starts by increasing it 30,000 this year and then gradually increasing it to a flat 125 per year in order to accomplish the fire apparatus. This, when we initially did the 75,910, it was based on the first engine on the page at 550, not 650. And it did not include a utility vehicle. So I had to adjust accordingly. And also looking out beyond the 10-year plan for that 700,000 to ensure that once we get there, we're prepared for it.
What was the discussion on the utility vehicle? Is that something that I can't remember.
That's the pickup truck, I believe, that they use. And they're looking to replace that in 21, 22. So we can walk through these, show my projections, and then any adjustments you make to capital, if you make them, I can accordingly make it to reserves if necessary. The next page is revaluation. That's just, this year it's 20, and just forecast increasing it gradually to get to the full reval in 26, 27. So we're projecting a statistical reval in 21, 22. Feels like you just finished a reval for 135,000, and then a full reval in 26, 27 at 250. Bless you.
Thank you.
The next page is the capital project savings. This is the cool one. This is the funding for the projects that were approved at referendum and the payment. So at June 30, the fund had 3.8 million in it. We have 241,000 in debt service I have to take off of that from last year. It's a due to, due from, so you know what that is. And then a budgeted transfer in of 430. And then it just shows the gradual transfer in as debt is retired. And I even, on the next page, gave you the debt schedule and gave you the amount that would be transferred in annually. So you can just see how that number is driven. So you can see the 432.98 and then 489, well, 411 in rounding instead of 410, but it shows you that the debt threshold is 2,197,986. So as debt is retired, what amount gets transferred in. And that's before what we owe USDA, because that's how we're paying USDA. What's very interesting to me to note at the bottom of page 4, in 2930, that fund will have $4.4 million in it. So as the financial needs roundtable moves forward and looks at additional capital, we certainly have opportunity.
I love that schedule.
I know, isn't it work of art? It's pretty cool.
And Rob, you know what this is all, right? I don't remember if you knew the history.
Next page, you already did animal control. You wanted to see about other funds, so I've given you recreation just to show you what their fund balances have been and where she stands so far this year.
So didn't we talk about transferring
We've talked about,
out of fund balance into?
when you get to section 2 in capital, you'll see I've moved the oversight into the operating budget, but I didn't project for next year. I'm just showing actual so far. So that would be a transfer in. But if you go all the way out to 2014, that's when we would seed them at the beginning of the year, and then they had to transfer a certain amount back, and that was the net of that 5,000. So that's where that oversight will start showing coming in. The next 2 pages are shared services, which Brian Reese will be here later to discuss. And then the last one is WPCA, just to show you where they stand. Obviously, 2019, I asterisked in both that and rec that it's year to date, it's not June 30. And it shows that 25,000 coming in. Oop, I need to make one correction on that. I'll fix that. It's not impactful. Okay. I'll rerun that for you. So that shows you how we stand with reserves. So the decisions in capital impact any changes to reserves.
question is, for capital. So
Really, the
30,000 increase on the fire, right?
30,000, right, in their in their increase,
3,000,
10.
have to.
You don't have to, but it'll catch up with us if we don't make that change. I think it's wise to phase it in.
And then the 489 is a combination of,
It takes that 432.98 plus the retired debt of roughly 60,000. That's why that increases. So that's really, it has no impact to the budget because it
Right.
decreased in debt and increased in capital projects reserve.
what about like where's the libraries and all that? We don't
We don't reserve
have
for any of them.
balance, no.
No, next year you will see an additional column here for police because of the new policies of the Board of Finance, that anything remaining, if you recall, we set up a special revenue fund for them for grants and
Right.
special and private duty. So whatever is remaining at the end of the audit per Board of Finance policy will now transfer in. So we're gonna create a police reserve to start saving for police vehicles. And Board of Finance Policy Committee, I'm going to bring to them the potential of looking at the rec budget and establishing a threshold that could be transferred in for rec capital down the road as well.
But the van for the animal control, are we transferring it out of
I
the
have-
fund balance?
I haven't moved it from, I haven't put a line in the animal control budget and then into capital, but I can do that. That'll just be where we record it. It won't impact the budget at all. It'll show capital, van, X amount, transfer from animal control, X amount, and it'll zero out. But I think it's appropriate to have it into capital so we can see it. If you want to look at capital, based on the changes you made, capital section 5. So on this total sheet, it shows the governor's proposed budget. There is a request of 1.7 million in the school budget for the ES elementary school envelope, and this represents half of that in state reimbursement, potential for FEMA reimbursement, using lakes reserves. You see the Rathbun Trust proceeds, and then walking through capital projects that are complete. We have 6,200 in unspent capital that can be repurposed. Would have been nice if it was like 620, it would have helped, huh?
Okay, so we haven't gone over education, right?
Brian Reese will be here at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock for the Board of Ed Capital and Shared Services. So if you walk through, you'll see the notes and changes you made.
Okay. I just want to go through the capital numbers again, so. Just the way this doesn't line up.
Which page, yeah?
Range, hall. And I just still think that with all the other things we have going on, I'm not really sure about
Excuse me for 1 second.
the replacement of the Grange Hall windows.
Hey.
I mean,
What's
I don't know. Where's Ron?
He didn't plan to be here till 11, and when you weren't discussing capital at the time he was here, he said he'll come back at 11.
Oh.
So if you need him, I can call him back.
We can just skip it for now, I guess. I was in 6 and 7 on 5, 6 and 5. Let's go to 8 and 9. Question is, do we push one of the cruisers off another year and just give them one for this year?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, the argument was they're gonna be up 15,000 next year.
Right, I understand, yeah.
I mean, just,
We know for sure they're gonna be up 15,000 next year?
that's what we've been told.
That's a big jump. It's $13,000 jump. I mean, excuse me. Yeah, $13,000 jump.
What page you on, sir?
We're on the police. So then our numbers are off for 2021 then. You said they're gonna be up 15,000 next year.
We can increase that.
Right, so you're saying next year should be 68,000 also.
Yeah. We can increase that.
You know, that's almost a 25% increase. Yeah, which is,
What did Ian say? There was a reason, right? Didn't they say?
I don't recall the reason for the increase in the cruisers, do you, Linda?
Something to do with a new motor or something that they're.
New design.
Why the cost was gonna be higher. In the next year's models. I know one of the ones they want to replace is the Tahoe, which is a 2002.
yeah, that needs to go.
And then the others, the other oldest ones are both 2014.
Right.
I don't know which one of the 14.
Well, it looks like they have a 2012 too.
No, remember the dates are
Oh,
wrong on
that's
here.
right, that's right. That's
The
right.
dates are wrong.
We have two 2015s and 2015 and 2017 and 2002.
So then oh my God, SRO would get the old 2004, the oldest with the most mileage, I would imagine.
Yeah, but if you only replace one, what are you replacing in one of the 2014? Are you doing the Tahoe? Because then if that's the case, the Tahoe will be the only thing available.
The budget request is for cruiser 1 and 2 to be replaced, Linda, and they would,
And not the Tahoe?
the Tahoe is on for, they took the in essence, they want 5 cruisers, so one will ultimately replace the Tahoe.
Yeah, but they're posting the Tahoe out to 22, 23, which doesn't make any sense right now because it's feet are getting washed because there's a floorboard issue, I understand.
But they're saying when they replace the cruisers, they're not gonna trade them in, or they're gonna keep what they
Right.
have.
Yeah. They have, the SRO needs a cruiser.
Well, yeah, I get that part. So my question, well, but each officer doesn't need their individually assigned vehicle either. I've said that for some time.
Right, but they do have overlaps on their times, is the
Yeah,
problem.
but I mean, having one permanently assigned to the SRO does not impact that, and there's not a huge overlap. So, but we can go with 2 vehicles, but, I mean, it seems to make most sense to get rid of the Tahoe, because it doesn't have many miles, but it is,
So when we say
16
get rid
years
of it,
old.
oh, you mean like, so the part-time, so who uses the Tahoe?
Part-timers, and they use it to tow the boat, so. But the other vehicles can tow the boat. It's not a huge boat, so.
So do the part-timers use the
Are
regular
they equipped to haul?
cars when
Most
they,
of them have receivers on them.
They do now, okay.
when the
Say it, I'm
part-timers go to a game or whatever, do
Yeah.
they use a cruiser or do they use their own
No, they
cars?
use a cruiser.
Usually there's a cruiser there, I believe.
Well, don't those cruisers, wouldn't one of those Ford Explorers pull a boat? No?
Yeah, they can do it.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know if they're all equipped with the receiver, the hitch. I know some of them do, but yeah, I mean, people pull boats that size all the time with
I know.
Explorers, so. I just can't see saving a 16, 17-year-old vehicle, keep putting money into it.
What?
I think, and I would verify this with the police officers, but I think the older cruisers, and I'm not sure if it's up until the 17th, because they're pursuit rated, they couldn't have a tow package on them, but I think the newer one they might have come up with a mechanism to make that happen, but I would confirm that with the police before you assume that all the other cruisers can hook boats.
Well, does it really matter? I mean, does it really matter what they're, right? The question is, do we need 2 more vehicles or 1 vehicle? I think that's the question. Like, I don't wanna get really assigning who's using what vehicle.
No.
But-
I'm just questioning, so do we need 2 vehicles or do we need 1 vehicle?
But I think the point he made was we need one, and the second one, simply good economics to do it now, as opposed to next year when it's gonna be a lot more expensive.
If we can figure out why.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, a 25% or 22% increase or whatever it is pretty significant, so.
But I'm sure there was some, here,
I don't remember what there was discussion,
There
I
was
think, about an
a
engine,
reason.
but I don't.
My apologies, I had forgot I had a commitment this morning when I said I could be here today, so I'm gonna be popping up and down to answer the phone.
Good exercise.
After we set the whole thing, I got home and looked at the calendar and went, uh-oh.
Let's see what they say. So that's a question. I mean, that's the ultimate question is whether, I mean, if we push it off another year, I'm not really.
I don't see we're gaining by pushing off another year, because by then we'll have 2 more vehicles probably that are out there, so.
Which we do, right? So do you
So,
wanna
I
just
mean, we're looking
suck it
at
up?
do 2 now, and then, we're looking at 1 per year, so, after that.
We're catching up with not doing cruisers for 2 years, is what's happening.
Is that why? Okay.
Because the 1 year,
We kicked it down the
We
road
kicked-
last
well,
year.
Well, we put 25,000 towards it
Right.
last year, so.
in the year prior, there were no cruisers.
Okay, well, so we can leave it in.
The question I had was, they're talking about keeping additional vehicles?
I'm thinking, well, we usually keep them and pass them down, but that
To
would,
whom?
they've gone to Public
Public
Works.
Works usually gets
Well, they all repurpose them.
passed down.
I just don't wanna see us increasing the fleet further.
No,
But depending on,
I
it
can
used to be going from police, the pass down went to the Public Works Director. But then when Mark was here, it went from the police to the first selectman, and then to the Public Works Director. But depending, Emmett doesn't choose to use a town vehicle, I don't know what's gonna happen come November, but
So, my point being, as long as we don't significantly or increase the fleet. I mean, if it gets passed down, I don't have a problem with it getting passed down.
And then whatever Matt's driving, chances are that then would get surplused out.
Right.
Because that's like I don't know, an 11, I think, or it's either a 9 or an 11, I can't remember. Crown Vic that she's driving.
Mhm. So the end result is we didn't change anything.
Okay, I'm like, are we changing it or are we not changing it? Okay, we're not. Let's go on. Public Works. So, oh, so Ron. The windows on the Grange. I'm stuck on those windows. I mean, so is it, like, do we need to get them done this year? Is there a lot of, are we losing heat? Is there an issue?
They're disintegrating rather than. Well, it's on the radar, we just certainly put it up.
You're not replacing them this year anyway, you're just starting to
Just starting,
save
To
for the
save.
replacement. So if it's over 3 years that you're putting in $10,000 a year.
To put in $5,000 for the next, whatever it is, couple of years and then.
well, we're scheduled for 10, 10, 10. Let's push it
Okay,
off.
so I understand we're pushing it off, but
What
how,
page are we looking at?
I'm looking at 4 and 5 and
All right,
section 5. The question is, are they gonna fall apart tomorrow, or can we replace them in 5 years, or do we have to replace them in 3 years, or what's the question? So, and I thought there was some replacement already happened, so I'm just stuck on that
Part of
too.
that grant, when they did the ramp, et cetera, they repointed, they glazed the paint,
They made them double pane.
redid the window weights.
No, they didn't, did they make them double pane?
I thought
Only the
they
double paint, though. They just.
did.
They just put the weights back on them.
No, there was something else they did, but whatever.
That's how it was explained to me.
Hey, Ron, could you go take a peek?
Right.
Seriously, because we've been around this 3 times now, so
I don't know,
let's-
I just remember them doing something with windows, but maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was at the building next door. So,
They did do town hall windows. But the old town hall, I know that was in there.
because this, I mean,
anyways, I don't really, I understand what you're saying, Emmett, but we need to make some cuts somewhere. So where are we gonna make the cuts?
Well, I mean,
So, if you,
so 2 things. One is
we can push,
if the windows are deteriorating and replacing them will save money in heating,
right,
then we have to evaluate that.
that's what I said, that's why I asked.
I think you're still good in that regard, you still have storm windows,
That's what I say, they had storm windows on, I believe, correct?
which is more of a deterioration in the window itself, so probably push it out a year.
So make it 15 and 15 the following 2 years. I don't know, I'm just trying to find some money somewhere. What are our real needs? I mean, I understand it's a need, it's not on there because we're just making it up. We gotta find some money.
What do you want to do?
That was my suggestion, so.
put it off, just push it out.
Is pushing it out gonna have any significant impact on? So we'll make it 15 and 15 then, is that the plan, or 15 and whatever?
Yeah, whatever. 15 and 15.
Up for discussion next year.
As long as we know that we've already, whoever's here doing this knows that it was already been pushed out another year. So.
I usually make a note of that.
Well, you're running again, right, Rob? First selectman, what are you doing? I'll ask you every meeting. Okay. Okay, now we have building department, vehicle replacement, what is that? For 25,000? Oh, that's the, okay,
So,
that's the van for the new guy we're gonna hire. Or the
not
truck,
the
or
truck.
the Escape, or whatever. Why
Yeah.
couldn't they use an old, why
So-
couldn't they use the Tahoe?
Technically, they probably could. But eventually, I mean, if it's already out there pretty good, the Tahoe would be fine. Not the Tahoe, no, not the Tahoe, no.
Why?
Yeah.
It's only got 58,000 miles on it.
It's only got 58, but it's got body rot all over it. That's the problem.
Is it really that rotten?
Well, I don't know, I mean,
I've
supposedly
never looked at
the
it.
floorboards are gone, so, and when you get out there
don't
17,
understand,
18
why is
years,
that-
it's 18 years old, you're gonna start to see frame issues and things like that, I would worry about. And that's where I start to worry.
Okay.
If the truck was, if we were down in New Mexico, it'd probably have another 10 years on it, so, because of the lack of salt, but,
My Suburban, 2006 with 260,000 miles on it.
my daughter drives a 1999 Camry, but, you know. But it also has 200,000 miles on it.
Right, so like I see a
But it-
Tahoe
it-
with
the
58,000
problem is-
miles on it, I don't understand.
So, well, it probably gets used less and less because it's less and less reliable, and now just the part-timers using it. But it's also bad when vehicles are just sitting, because all that stuff is sitting in there, salt and everything is working on it constantly, so.
I don't know. Okay.
So where, so we're back
on
to,
page
I mean, one of
67.
the Explorers could easily go to the building department if it doesn't go to, because they were looking for an Escape or something like that, correct?
Right,
So if we replace two of the cruisers.
we do 2 of the cruisers then.
One of those could go there instead of going to Beth. So,
Do we have the police where we can ask them how that would all fall out?
Why, they,
Well, and I missed that, sorry, I had to take that call. How many cruisers are they looking to have? I thought 5. So that
well,
would
they would
give,
still have 5.
they would still have
and then
5
they
if
would
we buy 2
repurpose
more.
another one.
And the
We
one
buy two.
being turned in would be repurposed to another agency or part of the town.
So the question is where, so let's see where we're buying a car, so let's see, building department's looking for 1, there's someone else looking for 1.
Animal
Dog
control, but
work.
that's covered,
Animal control's looking for.
That's covered by
their money.
their money.
Well, Public Works has their
Well,
replacement
they got
cycle.
several.
So is Beth not on here?
You're jumping ahead, so.
I know, but like, I'm just asking.
There's a
who
big,
else-
there's a $65,000 vehicle in Public Works, that's not.
Okay, but not, I'm just asking, is there another, like, vehicle
No,
on here somewhere?
only a large Public
Okay.
Works vehicle.
So the question is whether building department could take that Tahoe, I don't know. I mean, not the Tahoe, I understand.
Use repurposed police vehicles.
At least for a year.
Okay, so airplane, what are we on, air tank, air pack,
Right, we have
fire
a,
department?
So just a quick question, boat replacement, large boat for patrols in the police.
Oh,
I mean, it's not this year, but it's the next 2 years, we're not putting any money aside, but.
yeah, they've been wanting to replace their boat as well, but unfortunately, they don't have a reserve like the fire department had when they wanted to buy one.
Did I skip over, or we skipped over? I don't know, I skipped over something.
Well,
You
I've
initially
lost
skipped.
track, so you'll have to tell me.
But
what
initially
page.
it skipped over fire, so let's, if you take it
Okay.
in order.
Okay. So,
So where are we gonna go
you
first?
wanna talk about that, but since we're on police, where did you wanna talk about?
Well, I mean, they're looking for 22, the boat is just used on the lakes primarily now and occasionally on the river, so I just, it's something for next year to be thinking that, is it really necessary?
And also, is it necessary, and also, let's see how their special revenue fund works out, because
Okay.
that may be a source in which
Right.
to replace
Alright.
it.
Yeah. Okay, go backwards, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
think we skipped over 6 and 7, which was
Well,
fire.
you started to, but yeah. You had the building vehicle that you're looking to do a repurpose.
Radios staying there. We do need radios, right?
Yes.
Radio.
And air pack, we started doing this on an annual basis so that they, at one point, they were all the same age, and this way, you just keep replenishing the stock. And the roof, Brian, you said is urgent, not urgent?
Roof replacement for the fire department,
Company 3,
company 3.
if I put it off for the year, it's not leaking now. I want to get on the 10-year plan.
Do you wanna put it off? Hello, anybody?
It's fine, I mean,
Push it
it's
off.
gonna have to be done, but,
Right.
It's not leaking
how
yet.
old are the shingles, any idea?
They're at their life.
I mean, I just get antsy because if it's asphalt shingles, the oil could go way up and the shingle cost could go way up and. When you're talking about roofs, I mean, that's where you start to have deterioration, but if the boss over there says we can go a year, we're good.
Here.
Okay.
Good.
So repaved driveway, we got a quote on that, right? So 34,000 is the right number? And that has to be done.
It's in the worst shape of all the properties.
Of all the properties, that's the worst. So then the question is cameras. I don't understand, can we go to like Home Depot and get the little one they put up in the blink and whatever?
So where will these be monitored or it'll just be recorded? Is that what the proposal is?
Opportunities, that one quote is for a self-contained unit in each building, if you locked up, someone would have access to the hard drive that would store the information. I'm also trying to get the vendor that does this building to tie in, we have openings in this camera system, we can tie it in.
So they could commute, so it's technically you sitting in your office there could see,
And it would be
wait a minute,
stored
who's this
here.
person going in at when you're working late at night? You could-
No, but it's stored, right, the film's stored?
Either way, it's
Either
stored.
way it's stored, but it would be in-house here in our, but I don't have a price yet there.
Okay.
I just wanted to give them some sort of number so you have an idea of
I just,
ranges of coverages, how extensive you wanna do every door, you wanna do general areas, you wanna do badges. 6,000 will get you, and that's for all 3, so you can cut it a little, if you wanna do company 3. That's for roughly 2,000 for an in-house system that will be secure, that'll capture the flow.
do we have any digital lines from the, like, company 1 or 2 to here now? So there'd be a line cost involved and everything like that.
But I'm not sure.
So the issue is, we're just looking at this as a mitigation to prevent some abuses that have or have not occurred. That's what I'm still not sure about.
It's probably one of the only places we don't have cameras at this point.
Get a lot of access and
Well, there's lots of different people coming and going, I know, so, but. What do you think?
I don't know.
I think it's not a bad idea.
Huh?
I think it's not a bad idea.
I'm
I don't think-
comfortable with it. I don't know if we need anything at company 3, but hardly anybody goes in and out of there.
Three I would not worry too much about, so.
Which also makes it potentially more prone to being, or someone trying to break in and get something there. Does anyone know what's kept in 3 now?
Buffalo's out there.
Yeah, one other one's out there, but that's the hideout one.
The what one?
That's the one you probably wanna keep
Oh, the one, company 3? Oh,
visible.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. That one is the most isolated and probably less used, so you might want to get rid of there.
Well,
Let's keep it.
it would be consistent.
it's 6,000. I know, well, we got rid of 10, we've gotten rid of 10. Okay, we already mulled over the police. English for 5 years of life. Yeah, that's a good asphalt. And truck 2, that replacement schedule is still good.
It's a 10-year cycle, so it's,
So if the asphalt box, if something else comes up, there's no, I mean, we're appropriating it, but it absolutely does not have to go to an asphalt box. If something else came up, they could say that this became more important.
Conceivably, but there's real savings to be made with that.
No, I get all that, but in case there's something else that,
Like
Okay.
what?
I don't know, I mean, another piece of equipment broke down or something significant that the money could be repurposed. I'm just saying, when you put the money in, it's not specifically,
It is specifically.
it is specifically, so.
is.
Yeah, I mean,
Specific.
it can come back to the selectmen to move it.
But I mean, it'd be for equipment, but I'm just saying,
No, it'd be for not, so, right, that's why we have these little
okay,
sheets in the back, so that we know what we're saving for, right?
right.
Or what we,
I mean, this
we
asphalt
wanna know.
box would be an item we would have and be using immediately.
right, I don't want them thinking they, oh.
No,
okay.
I understand that, but.
Those dollars would be spent quickly.
There's nothing to talk about there unless you wanna get rid of, the only thing was I mean, you have the 2 amounts for 35,000, so.
Truck 2, that's the one to replace
Every,
the road foreman's job, or?
I think that's the road foreman's potential truck, and we're on a 10-year cycle for all the trucks, so.
And they earn their keep.
Oh, no, there's no question.
take
I mean,
a
that
beating.
one's, okay,
that's a lot of money.
well, it's a 1-ton truck, so.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
He plows, it does
Oh,
all of it. It's not as big as the other trucks, but it's,
It's a 1-ton pickup truck, it's got a sander and everything on it, and a plow on and everything.
I mean, that's a service vehicle that sees a lot of use.
so, one question I have, and maybe this is way off base, and Beth will wanna kill me, but between the trees and FEMA, how much road work are they gonna be able to get done? I mean, I'm just looking at the scope of everything, wondering how much stuff they'll be able to do.
Well, they still have to finish Petticoat.
Well, that's in this year's budget.
Right, but that, I'm bringing that up because it takes time. There's,
Yeah, that money's already there.
the money's there, but the staff is still gonna be involved in doing that this spring, presumably, so.
Because, and I know in Bone Mill, we think it's gonna come in under budget, we'll be putting all that together, so that might be money down the road to do some repurposing. Beth and I are working to analyze all that. But,
So we don't have any bids back on, well, Foxtown we've got, that's underway. Johnsonville, where are we at?
all that's in process.
But do we have bids?
Where are we on Johnsonville, Linda? I don't recall. I think we're
The
still,
bridge?
yeah.
Tomorrow, the construction bid's gonna hit the paper.
Okay.
For Johnsonville.
Johnsonville.
Okay.
So my point is, I mean, we have 1.3 million here, so that we have to pay 20%. way I'm looking at this, correct? 20%?
That's all been budgeted in prior years, that's all done.
Well, okay, I get that, but if it goes over budget, say it comes in at 1 point, the bids come in at 1.5.
And we have to come back to the town.
Why do you think it's going to?
Don't have a clue, but there's a lot of demand, so, you know, that can force up the prices too, so I don't.
And one thing to go back to FEMA, when you're looking at some of this road material and certain things, some of what Beth does, and I don't know to what extent, could be covered within some of her budgets already. So,
So, I mean, I'm looking at the roads to be determined and $500,000. You know, that's a big,
That's what we put in every year. So usually we
but
get a list.
that's because of the flood damage she's talking about there.
the reason Beth, if you recall, indicated she had not done a list is because she wants to wait and see through the winter and all these storms. She had talked about moisture in the road, so she would in the spring and summer evaluate, because we used to lay out all the roads, and then the damage over the winter would change things, and she'd have to reprioritize. So that's kind of why, unless there's a big ticket like Petticoat, that's why she's saying to be determined, because she's gonna evaluate everything come spring and take care of it. That's the difference.
Okay, I got that, but I'm just saying, again, are we gonna be looking potentially at more because of the concern of the saturated roads, or less? And I don't wanna be putting the budget together and then find out that we're gonna have to add 200,000 or whatever to something that, just after we got busy removing 200,000 from other stuff.
Right.
I don't have an answer. I'm just,
But I think that's what she's already essentially done here, is to look at it and try to come up with the best number.
So the road improvement materials is LoSiP, right? Is that the LoSiP money?
It slows up in tar usually. So a lot of that's funded by grants, and that would have been my next breath. You gotta make sure we're budgeting enough to cover those grants, or we're not eligible for those grants.
Pavement, shim and overlay,
Yeah.
those two are.
So part of me was thinking, could that be reduced, but it may help us meet our match to FEMA as well. Depending on what she's doing.
Tar and MRSA.
It's not as much as that, no. But we need to prove that we have that $400,000 worth of work,
Right.
and it is tested by the auditors annually. Prove that we did it.
So, but we only have 1, 2, 3. And then that, part of that 500 will go towards that?
I don't usually earmark a project specifically. I just make sure we have enough money in the budget, because I can also use things like guardrails and stuff for tar. So I just have to make sure that we allocate and pay, we are doing in accordance with the grant, that amount of expenditures. LoSiP, I submit an exact project. So for LoSiP, I'll use Petticoat Lane, because it'll eat up the whole grant and I'll be done.
So there's 419 in Petticoat Lane currently.
Yep. That'll be gone this spring when they pave.
Okay, so what do you mean you're gonna use, for this year's LoSiP, not for next year's?
Right.
Okay, so the 414 that we're getting in this budget for the grants, for LoSiP, tar, and MRSA, whatever it's called.
It's only $1,600. Well, we got 180 one year, but yeah, million.
Okay,
1,000.
so 414,000, so that's gonna cover the road improvement materials, the pavement shim overlay, and then what else? That's my question. Some of this storm damage, or is it
No,
some
I
of the
can't.
500?
I can't use it towards storm damage, I don't believe. But it would cover any road work that she's doing. I also can use it,
I understand for the, guardrails and stuff like that,
right,
right?
so, and I
Okay.
can, yes. They each have different components. Town Aid Road, you have to prove that you use the money. It can be used towards some snow removal, guardrails, things of that nature. But LoSiP is very specific of what you can and can't use it for. And LoSiP, I usually take and use it for a road improvement. A
So
specific.
We've already budgeted for guardrails and we're
Right.
budgeting for snow removal and everything else, so the 414. So I'm trying to get to the 500,000.
So here's my
Do
point. If
we-
you said, eliminate all of that, I'd say we'd be in trouble.
Right,
getting
no,
our
no, no,
grants.
and so the 128, the 104, whatever the number, 164 are fine, I'm just saying, is the 500, I guess, high?
And I started with that question, but then backing up, do you keep it there because it potentially can be used towards some of FEMA?
But if we're pulling FEMA out,
The match. So she may be able to use some of her budget to match it, maybe. So when, going back to my scenario of going to town meeting saying, FEMA will give us this is our in-kind, and she may be able to say, I can use X amount out of road improvement to finish it, may. So that's. I mean, we certainly can ask her to come by and speak to this to see if she can trim it in any way.
I just think. So,
Do you want her to come in?
so this 500,000 came from where? Like, where did she get it from originally? Wait, so this is something we've never budgeted for before?
What?
The 500, like last year we have no,
Last year we had Petticoat Lane, that was our 500 basically. Last year she specified one enormous road. This year, for next year, she's saying she'll evaluate it once the spring.
okay, so in the year before, like we did, one year we did
We did
O'Connell
O'Connell
Road
Road,
extension.
we've done W.F. Palmer, we've done Orchard, we've done,
But normally she gives us a target.
right. So, but she had said when she was here, she was not comfortable with specifying certain roads until she evaluates them all.
Basically, she needs to assess where the need is the greatest.
So Petticoat's running around 419. O'Connell Road was around 4 something, right? Ended up being more expensive than we thought.
Yeah, O'Connell Road,
Um,
you have to look at fixed assets to tell you that.
but my question is, do we need 5?
We certainly can ask Beth that.
Why don't we have her come in?
Okay, can she come in today, right? Want to be done.
Yeah. Let me step out and ask Dawn to call her to see what time she could come by. I'll be right back.
Okay. So the bucket truck is still in here, because we haven't talked about whether we're gonna, did we get that estimate together?
I haven't seen it.
Did you ask her to put it together?
I believe she was asked when she was here. She's speaking of the $2 million, just to hire someone to do it.
We wanted an actual estimate
Yeah, from someone.
from someone.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
I can tell you one thing, with the amount of work that's out there, you're gonna be very hard pressed to get anyone who would commit to that. I mean, we'd own them for 2 years, and then where are they at the end of that?
Dawn is checking to see if Beth can come after Brian Reese or after lunch, and we'll have a time.
So do we keep, so I guess if we don't have an answer on that budget yet for the tree removal, then do we keep the?
So, I mean, the bucket truck is the capital part of it, but then you're talking about 2 employees also.
Right, yeah, but I'm saying, right, so that ties in, if we're not gonna hire employees, then we're not gonna get a bucket truck. So, that's what I'm saying.
If it's all right with you guys, if you want, before Brian Reese gets here, I can give you some of the information I collected based on your requests. This is something from the ambulance. And it from the ambulance. Ambulance.
Is this the same thing? Did you give me again?
I'll give it to you twice.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Here's an extra one, Linda.
So their buildings, is that the Carefree building that they put the squad vehicle in? Anyone know?
Don't know.
What are we looking at there?
Balance sheet, buildings, either.
Buildings. Original, that would be the outside building, yes.
Okay,
The
the
squad.
Okay.
Give this to you. An update to friends. Huh?
Excuse me for being dumb, but is this the same page?
I gave you more than one set.
Yeah, I know, which is over here, but you gave me 3 pages on the canvas, they all look to be the same. Page, or am I just reading?
I gave you 3 sets. I gave you 3 sets of everything.
Okay,
Okay, so what is the deal with the ambulance again? If they're at what, we get what,
400,000,
we get what?
what we put in.
Whatever we contribute is returned to us.
400,000 in assets? No, in what?
in cash.
That's the total value, including their stocks and everything.
I was gonna say cash or where?
Look at the total liability and equity down at 502, that's the figure.
So they're full value.
Sum total of their value.
So the total assets are 502, so we're gonna get the money back again, probably this year.
Sorry.
We get whatever we contributed up to the 40,000 max we might contribute. Last year we contributed 20,000, we got 20,000 back. Year before we contributed 40, we got 40 back.
And that may be an option. I didn't forecast out ambulances, but you may want to hold off a year, but I always get concerned when you hold something off like the cruisers and you dug a hole you gotta come back into. This is just info that the registrars put together that's most helpful. How they staff each event, so that, you know, when people always ask us, what's a referendum cost, what's a this cost, what's a that cost, we have info. I'm almost done, I promise. Ambulance is only in reserves.
Oh, it's not in here. So it doesn't,
It's on the last page of section 2.
we don't have it in capital.
No, yeah. It is in capital under public safety. It's the first item in public safety. Ambulance association, right there.
Oh, but we have nothing.
No, it's out in the future, but what we put in as far as, money is in capital reserves. The last two pieces I'm giving you is the gas and diesel analysis. And lovely information from CCM on the governor's budget.
So can we repurpose what we have set aside and reserves for them?
I don't know if I would, I don't know, you can't go in and repurpose a reserve, but you could choose to fund less. You can't, once a fund is in reserves,
Right, okay,
it's in
but,
accordance with policy in order to move it, and so you couldn't just go take it.
right.
But you
wh-
could-
Where do we have it reserving for this year? Where is it in?
The last page is section 2 under interfund transfers, 25,000.
So we can choose to take that.
Right, you could choose to fund it less, but at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because if you don't fund them, they're not gonna give you any money. So, the agreement is based on what we expend. So if we don't spend any, they don't give us any.
So do we have we don't have though a wash. We don't have a transfer in and out.
No. Now, that is something the Board of Finance could look to rewrite policy to say, but then I don't know if that would negate their agreement, because the whole purpose is if we're expending, setting it aside for them, we'd have to look at the whole agreement before we started messing with that, I believe.
I mean, if we already have, how much do we have in reserves, 200?
Their reserve balance is,
How much is an ambulance?
ambulance right now has a projected balance after they buy a new ambulance of $60,797. And the proposed budget is proposing to transfer another 25,000 in. But if you don't transfer 25 in, they won't give you 25 either.
Right, so,
And we'll still end up having to
By the ambulance.
buy the ambulance.
But based
Sooner
on
or
the,
later, we're gonna have to come up with it.
but based on what's in there, you could maybe back it off a little, but
But what's in there right now? What page are you looking at there?
I'm projecting, it's in the first page of section 6. I'm projecting at June 30, almost 61,000.
but that's, how old is the ambulance?
Well, there's one in this year's budget to be replaced. They had indicated to you they're not gonna replace it yet. But that money's called for, so I reduced the available balance.
Okay, but so, Rob, add 200,000 to that, because currently it's at
Right.
260,000. Right, and they're supposedly gonna buy a new ambulance this year.
They told you they were not, the last ambulance took 2 years to bring to fruition. So we have them slated every 5 years, but it's not a quick process.
But did they say, I don't remember what they said.
They said that it's in good enough shape and they didn't need to replace it quite yet. They could hold off
So
on
my
that.
question is, why are we gonna put another $25,000 in there if they already have 267,000?
What it says here, the vehicle funding, we will provide to the East Haddam Ambulance Association through the municipal budget funds for nominal service replacement ambulances. We buy the ambulances.
I understand that. So we have
If-
$267,000 in there.
Okay, we set the money aside,
Right.
they give it back to us if they exceed the 400,000. If we don't set the money aside, they don't give us anything back, we're still gonna buy the ambulance.
I know, but we have $267,000 in reserves for an ambulance right now.
I understand what you're saying.
I guess the question with our agreement what you probably wanna look at,
How many ambulances can they buy in so many years? I don't know.
but look,
Here's the agreement.
speaking to Sue's comment, and maybe what we wanna look at is, are they reimbursing it? Because we've been putting into capital reserve, so I guess the question is, if they give us the money, can we just put it into the general fund versus putting it back into their reserves? So in essence, it's a reimbursement.
Why would we put in the general fund? So they have 500,000, right? So they're probably on track to, if we gave them 25,000, to give us back the 25,000.
Right.
Okay.
I find that pretty
Why we're
startling.
playing
I
the
hadn't
games.
thought they were
So
that.
they don't have to give us the 25,000, so that's by year, whatever we give them by year,
Right.
they have to give back to us?
Yes. If their fund balance is at the threshold.
So what's the difference? So we don't give them the 25,000, they don't give us the 25,000.
We're still on hook for an ambulance.
We have $267,000 in there to buy an ambulance.
But down the road, we'll be buying another one. And,
So this is actually.
things
for
may
the-
not be so
So
good.
what you're saying, this is actually not for this ambulance, it's for the
The
one,
next one,
5
because
years or
there's
whatever down the road.
200 has
6
been
years.
claimed. I would envision that they'd be starting to put together to go out to bid in the next year, but it takes a long time to do an ambulance.
We have $4 million right now to find. And I'm not saying find, to make a decision. I just think that's a lot of money that we have to, it's not like they need this right now. I understand we're planning for it. I don't know, do 5,000 as a placeholder, so we don't forget about it.
So
All I'm saying
what
is-
is the cost of an ambulance? approximately?
200,000.
Well, I have been told, and I don't have a particular figure, that what they're gonna be looking for this time around is gonna be a more expensive ambulance.
Because this will be replacing the.
The one that they
another
currently
Six-wheel
own.
drive.
The old one. And I don't know, I'm not that familiar with them.
Well, there's one it was van, and one that's a six-wheel drive.
I think the six-wheel drive, because it said it was the more expensive one they were gonna be replacing.
So you have $200,000 coming out of here this year. So did they tell you that number, or you just said?
It's in this year's budget to be purchased, so I automatically subtract it from the balance, so we
Right.
don't forget that we've already budgeted for it. We put it in this year's budget with the understanding that it takes a long time to start the process, but we can't start going out to bid for something there's no budget for. So it's in this year's budget, and it will roll forward until they buy one.
But where'd you get the $200,000?
They're reserves.
Where'd you get the number?
That is the number we used when we began this process
Right,
of
because we
planning on
started-
40,000 every year for
$40,000 a year
five
for 5
years.
And we cut it down to 25 because,
They didn't spend as much on the last ambulance.
how much was the last one?
165 roughly. Have to go back and look. I can tell you in a minute. We spent 169, almost 170 on the last ambulance.
So there's 30,000 approximately in reserve.
And it was budgeted in the 2014 budget, and it took to fiscal year 2016 to actually come to full circle and have an ambulance and pay for it.
And even allowing for a more expensive ambulance, 200,000 may well be enough.
I've already said where I think I should be, so. It's not like we don't have the money in there to buy an ambulance, we have the money, and I understand in 5 years, we're gonna have to buy another one or whatever. You know, maybe we'll have the tree situation figured out by then.
Shared services is in two sections of the budget, and there's a capital section. Section 2, page 28. you recall, for this year's budget, we pulled out wages and benefits from being transferred into a multi-year fund. So this is the wages and benefits piece, or wages, and other pieces. And Sue, you had asked for how it's tracking this year, so I put it at the bottom of the page so you can see this year's.
And this is through when?
January.
Through January. 7 months.
There'll be extra money left in health insurance and some insurances. We project what people are gonna use for fringe, and it doesn't always come out that way. So that'll all just flow back into the general fund at the end of the year.
So, and what is this year's budget? Where- So we realigned the health insurance and the new fringe.
Yep, we did.
Wait, is it on here?
Yeah.
I can't,
I'll be happy to tell you what it is. It's at the bottom, it's midpoint of this list right here, so shared services.
oh, good, okay, I was looking for the section.
Under general government.
Yeah.
So it shows a much lesser amount. Fringe is a moving target.
So we're gonna get to the,
Tech and maintenance is in section 6, when we get to it.
okay. So do we talk about that when we get there?
Yeah,
About,
we could, well, Brian Reese and Brian Perry are here. Do a Board of Ed piece for it, and
so the overall change in salaries is what? I know it says NA.
yeah, the percent, it's 2 1/4 like everybody else.
Okay. Why is travel reimbursement going up?
Travel reimbursement,
It's up 1,000, a little over 1,000.
if you look, we've spent much more in prior years. That would be money for Ron or I to attend, or the technology person to attend any of the conferences.
So the average.
Beth will be here at 11:30.
So are there conferences scheduled, or is it just?
I like to try to attend, Ron and, we don't go to conferences every year. I like to try to attend a GFOA conference once a year. I manage to get there about every 4 years. And Ron has attended some conferences as well. I mean, certainly,
The conferences don't cost the money, right? It's just the travel.
it's usually the cost of, well, the GFOA conference, yeah. Well, usually the travel and the hotel, that actually costs more than the conference itself. If you want to go to section 6, pages, and I apologize, Brian, your pages aren't numbered, but it's the piece that shows the transfers into the funds. You have town technology and BOE technology. Pages 8 and 9 for this section. Town technology is unchanged.
So what professional services do we buy for town technology?
We would buy, excuse me, if we were doing something, say with Munis that needed any kind of, which as we are implementing the time clock issue, we would have to buy professional services to help us set it up. Working with any of our vendors in that capacity.
So then what are technical services?
Technical services, that includes the Lion software for the libraries, Munis, Firehouse software, the website, town clerk software, Vision,
So those are
QDS,
our annual maintenance,
the
annual fees?
annual fees for all of the softwares and services used by town departments.
So we're already over budget for this year.
But being a multi-year fund, Sue, we build up each year to do things, so there's things that are being done this year, like the time clock system, and then that'll come off. So some of it gets built up and then it comes down, so we're trying to level it. That's why you see some reallocation, increase in hardware, because we've been doing some leasing for our computers and trying to maintain the replacement cycle. So we did some shifting out of other budgets and in there.
Okay, town technology, we carried forward 117,000 last year, from last year. So that gives us 289,000.
In there was the money to set aside to do the website, to do other Munis enhancements. And we plan for servers, et cetera. So some of that money carries forward and then it gets spent. A perfect example is if you look at last year, we had all that money we were planning for the move here of over $30,000. It's gone. So sometimes it builds up and we build up for a few years and then we spend it.
So right now, we have $80,000.
Also in here is all the town internets, et cetera. Anything of that nature. And technology related repairs, that comes into play if we need to call on our service. One example is when Mark Niddle was on vacation driving back from Alaska and we had that power surge, or when a tree hit that wire, took us out. So we had to call upon a service to come in and help us.
So we're requesting the same amount as last year.
Yeah, just redistributed it a little.
Redistributed it, right, but what are we estimating our balance to be at the end of the year? 'Cause right now, we're at 80,000 over,
We
still have 5 months left.
we still have 5 months of internet and such. I would think we'd carry a balance of about 40,000.
How many thousand?
40.
40.
And the reason we didn't change anything is a lot of this multi-year fund is the assumption that it does carry forward, so we can purchase servers and other things that we need. And we're monitoring it, again, as anything, very closely. I would be concerned to start chopping it, that we would run into problems if we had an emergency. I'd rather keep with the flat funding and know that we're in good shape.
But yet we also have town maintenance fund. That's for what? That's not for technology, that's for what?
So this is this multi-year fund for both
Right, yeah,
technology
no,
and maintenance. So that is used for, and Linda and Ron might want to speak to the maintenance fund. And then, of course, you have both Brian's here for the Board of Ed Maintenance
Yeah,
Fund and
so
Technology.
we'll get there. Town maintenance fund, so it looks like we're budgeting $75,000 a year.
Last year, we had a good year.
Right, so. Currently have around $75,000 left. We still have to get through 5 more months. So what goes through the town maintenance fund?
Catastrophic happened with the elevator, your fails, and the seal costs $10,000 to have that.
It would also be used if, after you just moved out the roof at the firehouse, if it started leaking, he would go fix it.
Okay, so right now we spent $75,000 in that fund. What have we, on what? Right, year to date, 75,000, am I looking at this right?
No,
Okay.
I can look up and tell you what we've used for the fund in the past. Current. Okay, I click on the wrong here. Hang on a second, I did. So examples for this year are, we needed to do some tree removal at the Rathbun. Yeah. A gate repair, some septic pump repairs. It's just things that you don't necessarily plan for. What else is in here?
I don't know, I just, 75,000, just, wait, just wanna.
Where was the septic pump repair?
Septic pump repairs, Williamson's. Here.
That's the one down on
It's been,
82.
It's for this building.
I mean, Linda and Ron may want to shoot me, but you may want to reduce it a little, but I wouldn't cut it
No, I'm not saying, I'm
exponentially.
just looking to see, and again, we still have 5 months left,
Yeah.
right, so.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically used for anything when you plan your budget that you haven't really foreseen.
Right,
And one of the things I really like about these maintenance funds, number one, is the town used to do special appropriations all the time. You were always going to town meeting for special appropriations for things like this. So now we're able to adapt to those.
was it, when did we used to do those, a long time ago?
Since you and I have been here, it hasn't been a lot.
I was
but
gonna
did-
say,
but I
we used
did
to try to stay
research
away
going
from
back prior years with contingency fund, and every town meeting was a transfer here or transfer there or appropriate. We don't do that
We
anymore.
don't, okay.
This helps us not have to go to a town meeting because we had a $1,500 septic repair.
Right, so, like, those 3 things were how much of the $75,000 that we spent?
Probably $8,000. Just looking at the list. We also had a thermostat
Oh, that's on, that's
Nest.
thermostat in all the buildings.
that was
Oh.
installed.
Programmable things.
Right, how much was that?
All buildings.
2,600. Oh, plus more than that. Yeah, that was just one bill.
Number of bills.
There's a whole list, yeah.
So this maintenance fund is for all little, big, any type of maintenance, not just, obviously, we don't have big maintenance things happening.
We have,
It's just little.
we have small maintenance funds in each town department, but if it's outside of what they had planned, but don't forget, this covers the town piece, and then these guys can speak to the board.
Right.
This covers every town building, every town park, every town cemetery, every piece of town property that something
know,
goes
but-
wrong.
I know, so, but we also have maintenance lines in those budgets also.
Very small, yeah.
Yes, I understand.
The maintenance lines in the budgets are pretty much identified items. That's your American alarm, your yearly bills that you know you're gonna get, and a very small portion, like when we're at the other small building, or the other town hall, I would put in a small amount that if a toilet broke,
Right,
I had
yeah, I
enough money
remember
to
that,
replace the toilet. I had enough money to fix a window pane.
right.
But if we had something that was like over $1,000, I didn't plan for that. That's when it has to come out of maintenance fund.
So basically what you're saying is over the last 7 months, we've nickel-dimed that to $75,000.
Right. And what is
Thereabouts.
propane heaters? Okay,
What's propane heater?
we had to replace some propane heaters at one of the town buildings. That was not anticipated.
So the building maintenance, the small maintenance fund will identify problems. Can't necessarily fund this one.
So, and I understand, right, so. Five-year average, you don't have a five-year.
Don't have a
I'm
five-year.
just, so right now we have 75,000 left, we're requesting 75,000 more, we're back up to 150,000. Just seems like a lot of money to me to be just kind of sitting there.
No, you can certainly back some off. We,
Not, not saying in the future you might not need to.
what happened is we cut it back to 50 a few years ago and
Right.
ended up putting it back to 75. So if you want to cut it and we find there's issues, then we can address bringing it back up. Because it started at 70, Linda.
I think, didn't we pull it back up because of the move here?
I don't recall that being the
No?
case. But we were at, I think we were at 50,
We
we
were
went to
at 50.
75, and then back down to 50. So certainly,
I
it's
say we
up to
bring it
you.
back down to 50, just for, I mean, because then we still have, again, say we have 70 left, maybe we'll have 60 left. That's still 110, right, on small maintenance.
Do we have anything, I mean, I know this is stuff that is unanticipated, but, never mind. It's unanticipated.
No, we have this building, like, what's the warranties of this building?
And we don't have, yeah.
I don't have a maintenance staff for the building.
Get our grounds guy, though. Get our grounds guy.
So you reduce that by 25?
That's my feeling on it, is that
Or
we're,
reduce it to 25.
You could always go to town meeting.
We can go back to town meeting
As
next
we
time he
used to
needs a
do.
septic pump. Yeah, no, I'm teasing.
why, how much is a septic pump?
I'm
Those three things
I'm
were
teasing.
$8,000.
You go read old town meeting minutes, they're hysterical.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
my
so-
You
perspective.
know, it hasn't been since we've been here.
No, because we
So,
put
I've
in
been
measures to
12
not
years.
do that.
So the question is, do you want to cut it 50,000, then have potentially 75, because assuming we spend an additional 25,000 this year on unexpected stuff for the next 5 months?
I would jump in and discourage that because you've pushed off a lot of other maintenance things, like we know the Grange Hall is having rotting windows, and you know you pushed off the roof at the firehouse. So by pushing all that off, you may not want to totally strip this, because that's what
Well,
will
I'm not
cover
saying I'm
those.
stripping it, I'm just saying that basically if we have a balance there of 75, round numbers.
Well, we still have 5 months left to go.
And we've done a good job in the first 7 months of spending
75,000,
$75,000.
I know, but, so that's what I'm saying, you still have the 25,000 basically there. And move it along, keep 75,000 for the future.
This is your little safety net, if you will, as you push off capital for things that need to be replaced and repaired.
What I'm still saying is that for next year, there'd be, bit of a guesstimate, but that there'd still be 75,000 there. But if you go with the 50, then it's 100,000.
What's your pleasures?
How about if we meet in the middle somewhere?
37,500?
Cut it in
So-
half?
No, he wanted to go down to 25. I said go down to 50.
Right, but 37.5 is cutting the current year budget in
I'd
half.
I'd go to the 50.
For now. We might have to come back and revisit this by the end of today. Let's go to 50. And then we'll- But I still want to talk about technology, town technology.
Do you want to take these guys while they're here first, because we're gonna be here all day, or no?
Well, just because I want to just finish a thought
Okay,
here.
okay.
I'm sorry, just give me 5 minutes. Technology-related hardware, what do we, so that's for all the computers we get here?
Computers, servers, and we currently have a lease with a $23,000 payment. So
Oh, okay.
it's a lot, it was a lot of replacement last year on a 3-year lease. First payment is due.
Okay, so we're leasing, what? We're leasing.
We
what?
lease laptops, et cetera, and we purchase servers and what have you. So this was for a major acquisition of computers and upgrades when we moved in here, not included in the building. A lot of people, we waited on replacing their computers till we moved in.
Right. So this is,
So this is basically, this 25,000, I envision seeing as you roll forward year to year to year, as we just keep replacing and rolling
Right.
forward on a lease.
so, we've already spent 25,000 this year.
Right, that's the lease payment. That's ready to make the first lease payment.
But we're only budgeting 25,000 for next year.
Right, because there's still some money left. You know, I still have that $7,000 left, so that's why we're trying to be reasonable. But we
Okay.
shifted things around and didn't change try to look at the usage and where we were spending and knowing what we had coming down the pike.
So all computers are leased except, and our servers are bought.
At this point, but not all, as we replace, there's still some to do, but majority at this point. We've been following that model. It's easier to replenish them every 3 years.
Okay. I'm done with my questions. What about,
Do you want us to start a little bit on the shared services piece, or are you guys all set with that?
oh, no, start on shared services.
So essentially, it's the same from our perspective, and if there's a $25,000 increase in the hardware line item in there, and that is focused primarily just on replacing equipment. We've been able to, if you recall last year, the $50,000 increase was put in the same place that was eliminated. And essentially, we've been able to stay at the current funding, which we've been at for quite a number of years, because we've switched our students over from laptops to Chromebooks, and that's meant a financial savings. We've been able to really use funds to make them go farther. But we're coming, at some point, that's going to not be able to be possible. So at some point, it's going to be teacher laptops, office computers, and those don't translate. In fact, those prices are starting to actually go up and inflate. So I think essentially it is a staying right where we are. It's an ask that keeps our current funding level to meet the same level of resources. And I think it's, Cindy, I don't remember exactly, but I know it goes back a number of years in terms of.
We used to be at $300,000 a year for Board of Ed technology, and that was reduced to $250, I think a year or two, the year before Brian arrived. And there was, when we first implemented it, there was a goal, we were looking at in the inventory and replacement cycle, and the goal was that the budget would start to increase, and in fact, has been at least 5 years at 50,000 or less. You can see 1 year actual out there, that was 312. There was some planned replacements in that cycle.
So I anticipated a question maybe about the other kind of our technical services, and that pretty much is just keeping the network alive. From the fiber connection between the buildings, which is how the town schools have internet, paying for CEN, which we never used to have to pay for, the state used to provide it, the Barracuda filters, which keep the spam from coming in as best it can, library software, Power School itself, things like that, and Microsoft licenses, which allows every piece of equipment we have to have Microsoft programs on.
And what about internet? We spent 27,000 on internet?
Sure, so the fiber connections between buildings, which we rent space on a fiber cable from, is it AT&T now? Yeah, AT&T, is $21,500.
And when Brian spoke about CEN and both the town with the libraries and Board of Ed impacted, that was something the state used to give us for free.
And that's $5,400, so there you get your $27,000 just for internet. I think we all benefit by the fiber in town though, right? Because this building is on fiber, correct, from its old school
I
connection.
believe so.
So those are the kind of areas we've had these conversations too, like how can it be that much money for internet?
Right.
Actually, from what I'm told, that's actually pretty reasonable, because a lot of places, if you don't have fiber lines, you end up paying for T1 or T3, something like that, and they don't do as much, but you have to buy more of them, and it costs a lot more.
So other technical services, so, because you mentioned CEN in there and in internet. So, and then technology maintenance.
So
What is all?
tech services, Brian,
And tech
is,
supplies.
tech services is the website. It is also backup. We sometimes call in, I always get the initials of the firm mixed up, Brian, begins with a T.
TNBG,
What's that?
Total Business Network Group, TBNG. So they are because we have a very small tech department, when we run into bottlenecks, we call them in for a window of time to come in and help us figure things out. So for instance, when we have a series of 100 computers being replaced, we call them in because in 1 year, that literally happened over 3 weeks in the summer. And we just, it would take us about 6 months to put out that number of computers. They also have all the equipment. So it's a way for us to function with such a small department, which we're very happy to have.
Tech supplies are keyboards, mice, batteries, cables, printer cartridges, anything like that for all the schools.
And so in the hardware, are you guys leasing also?
Yes, and really, after 3 years, everything we purchase, if we bought it, is, for lack of a better term, junk.
Yeah.
Right, it just doesn't have any value to it. It causes us a problem of it's actually a problem to get rid of this stuff. It actually costs us money, so
I'm actually
that is
surprised by that.
a
Only
great-
because at the hospital, we said the same thing when we got new computers. We're on our 50th year with them now. They're working great.
Is that right?
Because we always budgeted for every 3 years.
But they're not used by kids.
So
That's
I'm
great.
just surprised. So, I don't know,
You may pay more in the beginning.
probably, I'm sure.
We get the kind of, they are commercial grade, they're not consumer grade, but they're the lowest step of the commercial grade. There are higher grades.
So. I mean, you're already at 228 year to date. There's still 5 months left to go, and there's not a lot left after.
That reflects the encumbrances already in place for internet and everything. We do work on a purchase order position, so that's money locked down, so it can't get used for other,
Okay.
using the purchase order. So that includes the encumbrances.
Okay.
I just didn't have room on the page for an encumbrance column as
Yeah.
well. I tried.
Um, And Board of Ed maintenance fund. Unless anyone else had any questions. So what is that?
It's like the town maintenance fund for catastrophic things, I'm assuming?
So what have we spent 161,000 on so far?
We can call them catastrophic, and we've talked about that, but they are things that happen. So the middle school needs a pump in its fire suppression system tank that went out. You have to have that, there's no questions. So we are now looking, we are having to figure that out. Because it was built, the tank actually has to be changed in order to get a new pump, the old pump out and the new pump in. The way they did it, that's, I believe, running about $10,000, am I close? $10,000.
So is it in this
That's
year's
one
year-to-date
minor
number,
Little pump
the 160?
that should last a little longer. We, of course, go after it. We've had a $5,000 went by the way overnight when we all had all that rain, and it destroyed part of our middle school, didn't destroy, damaged part of our middle school gym floor. So, and we have a $5,000 deductible. So it's about a $6,500 project. And those, if you think about that, our square footage is 200 and something thousand square feet in our buildings. They seem catastrophic if they were in your house, I suppose, but in the big picture, they're just things that happen. So, and we're taking another step to make sure that that doesn't happen again by more insulating it, making sure that that area is cleaned up, which we had made some attempts to do before, but that didn't apparently work through the freeze we had in January.
So are there other maintenance funds in your budget?
So we do have a maintenance account in the budget, yes.
What is,
Typically that is used in getting the fields mowed, getting machines fixed that we know are coming up to be just repaired, those kinds of areas, that's where that goes.
And just to add to that, similar to the town, schools, regular plan items and annual fees are included in the operating budget, not in here.
right.
So maybe a better phrase is unanticipated or emergency repairs.
But I wasn't correcting you, it just.
No, that's fine, because we used that phrase before, but that's,
So, and on the size of the building, it's,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I'm
it makes
with
a
you.
difference. That gym floor to replace is, I'm sure.
that's
will be a
5
whole lot
acres
more money.
of floor space that you have to worry about.
I mean, that's a good number to have, the square footage, what this covers.
It's a lot, and you have a lot of buildings too, so it's not all.
Right,
one.
no, I know.
You know, and you're right, I'm not telling you.
You ready for capital?
Yep.
Section 5. And go to Board of Ed capital begins on page. Gosh. 24.
So, this budget actually reflects a slight change in how we're presenting information. for a couple of reasons. One is, after our conversations at the Financial Needs Roundtable, which have been very helpful to have, we've talked a little bit about the fact that some of these things are never going to be at a scale that are gonna fit into the annual budget. And so what happens is, you know, with like the high school roof as an example, because it's really hard to consume those things in an annual budget, they kind of get put off. And understandably, because we all have to work with the same resources, and I get that, that's all good. At the same time, the putting them off makes them look like they're less important at some level, and maybe there's a reason to try to at least put them all in a year to say, here's a number of large items. As soon as I get to the education piece, here it is. So when you go down and you're on the district-wide, and you're in the 1920 column, you see that there is a groundskeeper truck that's in its 13th year now. It was actually up for replacement a few years ago. We've kind of put that off, and I'm okay with that. There's a 2010, a 9-year-old van as well that we have in for next year. The mower with its final payment, and a $12,000 payment, which is right in the middle of the Ventrac, which has already proven its worth during the few storms that we've had in dealing with our sidewalks. We are in the position of, we put in the envelope study in the 1920 request, and understandably that's probably bigger than you want to deal with for 1 year. But there's been some conversation at the Financial Needs Roundtable about, you know, whether or not that's something that you would end up bonding. That is one of those areas that is a decent amount of that number. 50.7% reimbursement from the state is available for that project.
What is that? What is an envelope study?
The envelope project is to do all the windows and outdoor issues at the elementary school. So windows, doors, all of those things, most of them are from 1965. We have actually a 2004 facilities report that actually talks about that those really need to be prioritized in the next 4 or 5 years. But, you know, in the big picture, we started that whole $20 million project before I was here about, you know, kind of figuring out what is next and what can the town afford. Now there's a roof that we're not leaking anymore. But we do have windows that fall out, and we're probably sending a lot of heat through the doors and windows. But that really should be done sooner than later. And obviously it may need to be something that goes into a more of a referendum type question, but we thought it was important to get those things out here. The next thing you see is a library furniture item. We continue to move our libraries into what's expected in this day and age, away from kind of standard library, come in, sit, and read a book, and leave, which kind of was the 1950s approach. So that takes some new furniture. We are asking our kids to reflect on, and it worked. You know, it was some of the chairs I think are from the 1950s actually. So they've done a good job. So the music studio, we ask our kids constantly to develop their projects in different ways, as opposed to writing papers or dioramas.